This story takes us on a journey through the life of a successful but distant lawyer, Jasper Whittaker, whose life takes a dramatic turn after a chance encounter with a young boy selling sweets on the streets of New York. Jasper focuses on his career and initially brushes off the boy, only to later discover that this child is Aiden, the long-lost son of his estranged best friend, Dominic Reeves. Jasper's realization leads him on a path of redemption, as he seeks to reunite father and son while confronting his own past mistakes. As Jasper opens his heart to Aiden, they begin to heal the wounds of years of separation and misunderstanding, offering a glimmer of hope for a brighter future. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. The young black boy stood timidly in front of the grand office of the high-powered lawyer, his small frame dwarfed by the imposing structure. His heart ached with the sting of humiliation, a pain that deepened with every passing second. Yet, when the lawyer finally uncovered the truth about who this boy was, his world was shaken to its core. It was a typical Monday morning in the bustling heart of New York City, but for Jasper Whittaker, it was the beginning of another relentless pursuit of success. As the first light of dawn barely grazed the skyline, he stepped out of his opulent Upper East Side apartment. Clad in a meticulously tailored suit and gripping a briefcase of the finest Italian leather, Jasper was the very embodiment of ambition. His steps were swift and purposeful, a stark contrast to the quiet stillness of the early hour. The echoes of his polished shoes reverberated off the deserted sidewalks, the only sound in a city that was just beginning to wake. Jasper's eyes, normally sharp and discerning, were fixed on his wristwatch, his mind a flurry of thoughts about the critical meeting that loomed ahead. He glanced at the time repeatedly, each glance a reminder that he couldn't afford a single misstep. The people he passed were nothing more than shadows in his peripheral vision, mere obstacles in his relentless march toward the pinnacle of his career. As he rounded a corner, Jasper was abruptly jolted out of his thoughts. He nearly stumbled over a small figure standing in his path, a boy, no older than 10, holding a box of sweets in his tiny hands. "Excuse me, sir," the boy stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Would you like to buy some sweets?" "They're to help my school." The boy's voice trembled with a mix of hope and fear, his words laden with the weight of his desperation. Jasper looked down with a scowl, his blue eyes cold and unforgiving. The child was frail, his clothes tattered and worn, his brown hair disheveled. Yet it was the boy's green eyes, wide and innocent, that momentarily locked onto Jasper's, silently pleading for kindness. But Jasper's heart had no room for compassion. "Move aside," he snarled, shoving the boy with a callousness that surprised even himself. The boy stumbled, and the box of sweets tumbled to the ground, scattering across the pavement. Without a second glance, Jasper continued on his way, leaving the boy crouched on the cold concrete, hurriedly gathering the fallen sweets with trembling hands. Had he looked back, he would have seen the boy's face crumple as tears welled in his eyes, a look of profound sorrow and resignation that no child should ever bear. 20 minutes later, Jasper swept into the sleek, modern office of Whittaker Associates, his family's prestigious law firm. The air inside was crisp, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. His secretary, Emily, greeted him with the usual cup of strong black coffee and a towering stack of documents. "Good morning, Mr. Whittaker," she said, her tone professional yet warm. "Your meeting with the Apex Corp executive is scheduled to start in 10 minutes in the conference room." Jasper acknowledged her with a curt nod, already flipping through the papers she handed him. "Any messages?" he asked, his voice clipped and businesslike. Emily hesitated, her usually steady demeanor faltering. "Yes, there is one message. Dominic Reeves called. He insisted it was urgent and asked you to return his call as soon as possible." The name hit Jasper like a lightning bolt, freezing him in his tracks. Dominic Reeves, his closest friend from law school, a man who had once been as close as a brother but whom he had not spoken to in nearly a decade. The past suddenly surged forward, unbidden, bringing with it memories long buried beneath layers of ambition and time. Dominic, Jasper whispered, almost as if the name itself carried the weight of forgotten years. The floodgates of memory creaked open, releasing a torrent of images, late-night study sessions, shared ambitions, vows of unbreakable brotherhood. But with time, those bonds had frayed, severed by diverging paths, widening silences, and the relentless demands of life. The shared dreams had faded into the background, replaced by contracts, clients, and the unyielding climb to the top. Mr. Whitaker, Emily's voice gently pulled him back to the present, anchoring him to the here and now. The meeting, she reminded her tone, a careful balance between professionalism and concern. Jasper blinked, shaking off the fog of nostalgia. "Yes, of course," he responded, steeling himself once more. "I'll handle it later. Let's go to the meeting." The next 2 hours passed in a blur, though Jasper was as sharp as ever. He deftly maneuvered through the labyrinth of negotiations, dissected contracts with surgical precision, and anticipated every counter from the Apex Corp executives. He was a master in his domain, a force to be reckoned with in the legal arena. Yet, despite his outward focus, there was a quiet, persistent echo in his mind, a voice from the past that refused to be silenced. Dominic's voice was a whisper from a time when life was simpler, when success wasn't the only measure of worth. When the meeting finally concluded, Jasper retreated to his office, shutting the door behind him, as if to barricade himself from the whirlwind of emotions threatening to overtake him. He stood still for a moment, staring at the phone on his desk, the number Emily had given him scrawled neatly on a slip of paper beside it. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the receiver, a hesitance that was alien to him. The phone rang once, twice, and then, on the third ring, a voice answered. It was familiar, yet weary, burdened by the passage of time and the weight of unspoken words. "Hello." "We?" Jasper's breath caught in his throat. "Dominic, it's Jasper." A long pause stretched between them, the silence so thick it seemed to choke the air. Jasper almost thought the call had dropped when finally Dominic spoke. "Jasper," he said, his voice a fragile mix of relief and wariness. I didn't know if you'd call back." "What happened, Dominic?" Emily said it was urgent. Jasper's voice was steady, but his heart pounded in his chest, bracing for whatever came next. There was another pause, filled with the unspoken pain of years lost. Then, in a voice heavy with sorrow, Dominic revealed, "It's about Aiden, my son." Jasper frowned, struggling to recall the faint memory of Dominic mentioning his son in passing years ago. "What about him?" "He's missing, Jasper. He's been missing for 3 years." Jasper felt as though the ground beneath him had vanished. 3 years? 3 years? "Dominic, why didn't you reach out to me earlier?" "I tried," Jasper. Dominic's voice cracked, a lifetime of desperation bleeding through the words. "In the beginning I tried, but you were always so busy, always in those critical meetings. And after a while, I guess I just gave up. It seemed too late." The guilt surged through Jasper, a brutal reminder of every missed call, every neglected message. He had been so consumed by his ambition that he had let one of the most important people in his life slip away. "I'm sorry, Dominic. I didn't know." "It's not your fault," Dominic replied, though his voice held a faint bitterness, an edge born from years of hurt. "I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I just I'm desperate, Jasper. The police stopped looking a long time ago. I need help." Jasper closed his eyes, the image of the boy from that morning flashing in his mind. A wave of dread washed over him, a gnawing fear that clawed at his insides. "What does Aiden look like, Dominic? Tell me about him." "He's 10 now. He has brown hair and green eyes. He was always so skinny, you know. And he had this habit of biting his lip whenever he got nervous." As Dominic spoke, Jasper's heart began to race. The description was eerily familiar, It couldn't be, could it? Dominic, I have to go, but I promise I'll help you. I'll do whatever it takes. He hung up the phone with a trembling hand, the urgency of the situation crashing over him like a tidal wave. Grabbing his coat, Jasper bolted out of his office, ignoring the startled looks from his colleagues. There was no time to waste. He had to find that boy, the boy who might very well be Dominic's son. As he sprinted through the streets of New York, a city he had long conquered in the courtroom, Jasper felt something foreign grip his heart: fear. Fear of being wrong, of missing the connection. But even more terrifying was the fear that his years of indifference, of placing work above all else, had led to consequences far beyond anything he could have imagined. When Jasper finally reached the corner where he had first encountered the boy, his breath came in ragged gasps. His heart raced, not just from the sprint through the city streets, but from the urgency that gripped him. His eyes scanned the area frantically, searching for any sign of those haunting green eyes and that messy brown hair. And then, there he was sitting alone on the steps of a building, the battered box of sweets by his side. The boy's posture was slumped, his face a picture of quiet defeat, a sight that pierced Jasper's heart in a way he hadn't expected. With tentative steps, Jasper approached the boy, each step heavy with the weight of regret and determination. As he got closer, the boy looked up, his eyes widening in recognition, quickly followed by a flash of fear. Jasper's heart twisted at the sight. He knelt beside the boy, trying to make himself less imposing, his voice soft and gentle as he said, "Hi." The boy didn't respond immediately, his eyes darting between Jasper and the ground as if searching for an escape. I'm sorry about what happened earlier," Jasper continued, his tone laced with sincerity. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated, his small hands clutching the box of sweets, as if it were his only lifeline. "Aiden," he finally whispered, the word barely audible, but carrying the weight of a revelation. At that moment, Jasper felt his world shift beneath him. The name echoed in his mind, connecting the pieces of the puzzle in a way that left him breathless. "Aiden," Jasper repeated, his voice full of emotion. It was as if saying the name out loud made everything more real, more urgent. The noise of the bustling city faded into the background, leaving only the two of them in this shared moment of realization. "That's a good name." "How old are you?" Jasper asked, trying to keep his voice steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. The boy's green eyes studied Jasper warily, as if trying to decide whether he could trust this man who had pushed him aside just hours ago. 10, Aiden finally replied, his voice tinged with a mixture of caution and resignation. Jasper's breath caught. 10 years old, just as Dominic had described. The coincidence was too powerful to ignore. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Jasper spoke again. "Aiden, I know I didn't treat you well this morning, and I'm truly sorry for that. I want to make it up to you. How about I buy all your sweets?" Aiden's eyes widened in surprise, clearly not expecting such an offer. "All of them." "Why would you do that?" he asked, suspicion lacing his tone. Jasper smiled gently, trying to convey genuine remorse. "Consider it my way of apologizing. Maybe we can even sit and share some while we chat." What do you think? He hoped the offer would be enough to bridge the gap between them. Aiden bit his lip, a nervous habit that Jasper instantly recognized from Dominic's description. After what felt like an eternity, the boy nodded slowly, accepting the olive branch. Jasper quickly bought the entire box of sweets and led Aiden to a nearby park, where they found a secluded bench. As they sat down, Jasper couldn't help but notice how tense Aiden was, his eyes darting around as if expecting something bad to happen. "So Aiden," Jasper began, unwrapping a chocolate bar. "Do you live around here?" He tried to keep his tone casual, not wanting to scare the boy off. Aiden shrugged, taking a sweet from the box but not eating it. "Kind of. I move around a lot." His voice was quiet, almost as if he was used to not being heard. "What about your parents?" Jasper asked gently, hoping to draw Aiden out. "Do they move with you?" The boy froze, his fingers tightening around the sweet until it nearly crumbled. "I don't have parents," he muttered, his eyes fixed on the ground. Jasper's heart clenched at the boy's words. The pain in Aiden's voice was unmistakable, a deep-seated hurt that no child should ever carry. How could he have been so blind, so cruel earlier that morning? "I'm so sorry," Aiden, Jasper said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "That must be tough." Aiden shrugged again, but the pain was evident in his eyes. "I'm used to it. It's better this way." "Better? What do you mean?" Jasper asked, his heart breaking a little more with each word. "No one can hurt you if you don't care about anyone," Aiden replied, his voice filled with wisdom far beyond his years. The sadness in his tone was almost unbearable. Jasper felt a wave of protectiveness surge within him. What kind of life had this boy lived to make him believe such a thing? He wanted to reach out, to hold Aiden and tell him that he was safe, that someone cared, but he knew that would only frighten the boy more. Instead, he spoke softly. "Aiden, I know we just met, but I want you to know that there are good people out there. People who care." Aiden looked at him skeptically, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Like you, the guy who shoved me this morning." The shame hit Jasper like a physical blow. "You're right," he admitted, his voice filled with regret. "What I did was wrong, and I'm truly sorry for that. But I'm here now, trying to make it right. Sometimes people make mistakes, but the important thing is to learn from them and try to do better." Aiden stared at Jasper, his expression a mix of skepticism and something that looked like hope, though it was buried deep beneath layers of hurt. "Maybe," Aiden said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "but not everyone tries to fix their mistakes." "No, not everyone," Jasper agreed, his voice soft but firm. "But some of us do, and sometimes, just sometimes, that can make all the difference in the world." They sat in heavy silence, the minutes stretching out as they shared the sweets and watched the world move past them. Jasper wrestled with his thoughts, unsure of how to bring up the topic that weighed heavily on his mind. Finally, he decided to take a chance. "Aiden," he began cautiously, his voice gentle, "do you remember anything about your life before ... before you started moving around so much?" Aiden's small frame stiffened, his eyes growing distant as he retreated inward. "Why do you want to know?" he asked, suspicion coloring his tone. Jasper swallowed, choosing his words with care. "Because I think I might know someone who's been searching for you, someone who cares about you more than you realize." The boy's eyes widened, emotions flickering across his face, hope, fear, and disbelief all at once. "Who?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jasper took a deep breath, the name he was about to say feeling like a fragile lifeline. "Your father, Aiden, Dominic Reeves." The name landed like a thunderclap. Aiden shot to his feet, the box of sweets spilling onto the ground as his face contorted in anguish. "You're lying," he cried, tears beginning to well in his eyes. "My father doesn't want me. He abandoned me." Jasper quickly rose as well, his hands raised in a gesture of peace and sincerity. "No, Aiden, that's not true," he pleaded, his voice filled with urgency. "Your father has been looking for you for years. He's been desperate to find you." Aiden shook his head furiously, the tears now flowing freely down his cheeks. "No, you ... you don't know anything. He left me." The words choked in his throat, unable to escape as sobs racked his small body. Without thinking, Jasper closed the distance between them and gently pulled Aiden into his arms. To his surprise, the boy didn't resist. Instead, Aiden buried his face in Jasper's shoulder, his tears soaking through the fabric of Jasper's suit. Jasper held him tightly, murmuring soothing words, his hand rubbing circles on the boy's back. "It's okay," Aiden Jasper whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "It's okay to cry. You've been through so much." For what felt like an eternity, they stayed like that, Jasper holding Aiden as the boy let out years of pent-up pain and loneliness. When the sobs finally subsided, Jasper gently pulled back, looking into Aiden's tear-streaked face, his heart breaking all over again at the sight. Aiden Jasper began softly, "I promise you, we'll figure this out. I'll help you reunite with your father, but I need to know where you're living now. Can I take you home?" Aiden hesitated, biting his lip in that familiar way, the fear of the unknown battling with the desperate need for help. "It's not a house," he muttered, his voice small. "It's just a place where I stay." Jasper nodded, keeping his expression neutral despite the concern gnawing at him. "That's okay. Can you show me where it is?" Reluctantly, Aiden agreed, and they began to walk. Jasper stayed close to the boy's side, watching as Aiden navigated the streets with a familiarity that spoke of long hours spent alone in this vast city. The sun dipped lower in the sky as they turned down narrow alleys and slipped through shortcuts until they finally arrived at a dilapidated building. The windows were shattered, the walls covered in layers of graffiti, a stark contrast to the luxury Jasper was accustomed to. "This is it," Aiden said quietly, leading Jasper through a side entrance. Inside, the building was even more dismal. The air was thick with the smell of mold, and the chill was palpable. Aiden guided Jasper to a corner where an old, stained mattress lay on the cold floor, covered by a thin, threadbare blanket. A few carefully folded clothes sat beside it, along with a battered backpack that looked as though it had seen better days. Jasper's heart clenched painfully at the sight of the conditions this child was enduring. Aiden Jasper said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, "You can't stay here. It's not safe." The boy shrugged, sitting down on the mattress with a defeated look. "It's better than the streets," he replied, his voice hollow. Jasper knelt beside him, his heart breaking anew. "Listen, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I want to help. How about you come with me tonight? I have a guest room in my apartment, and tomorrow we can start looking for your father together. What do you think?" Aiden's green eyes bore into Jasper's, searching for any hint of deceit. The boy's inner struggle was evident, but eventually he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Okay," he whispered, his voice fragile, "but just for tonight." A wave of relief washed over Jasper, and he smiled gently. "Good, let's get your things." Together they gathered Aiden's few belongings, each item a testament to the harsh life he had been forced to endure. As they left the abandoned building, the sky was ablaze with the colors of sunset, painting the city in hues of orange and pink. Jasper looked down at Aiden, who walked beside him with his backpack slung over his shoulder, and felt a stirring of hope deep within him. This was only the beginning of a journey, one filled with uncertainty and challenges, but for the first time in years, Jasper felt as though he was finally on the right path. As they made their way through the twilight streets, Jasper silently vowed to reunite Aiden with Dominic and uncover the truth behind the boy's disappearance. In doing so, he hoped to heal not only the boy's wounds but also his own. Because in saving Aiden, Jasper realized he might just be saving himself too. Jasper's apartment on the Upper East Side stood in stark contrast to the abandoned building Aiden had called home. The polished wooden floors gleamed under the soft lighting, modern art adorned the walls, and designer furniture filled the space with a sense of elegance and sophistication. Aiden hesitated at the doorway, his eyes wide with awe as he took in the surroundings. "Wow," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You live here alone?" A pang of guilt pierced Jasper's heart as he observed Aiden's amazement, realizing how different their worlds were. "Yes," he replied, guiding the boy inside, "but tonight you're staying here with me." Aiden nodded silently, his green eyes sweeping over every detail of the apartment, as if trying to capture and memorize each one. Jasper watched him, noticing how small and out of place the boy seemed amid all the luxury, a fragile presence in a world that wasn't his own. "Come on, I'll show you where you'll sleep," Jasper said gently, resting a hand on Aiden's shoulder. The boy flinched slightly at the touch, but he followed Jasper down the corridor. The guest room was spacious and tastefully decorated, with a large king-size bed that seemed to dwarf Aiden when he cautiously sat down on it. The bed's vastness only emphasized how out of place Aiden felt in this new environment. "You can make yourself at home," Jasper said, trying to sound reassuring. He pointed to a door across the room. "There's a bathroom over there. Why don't you take a hot bath while I prepare something for us to eat?" Aiden bit his lip, a gesture Jasper had come to recognize as a sign of his nervousness. I don't have any other clothes," the boy admitted quietly, his voice tinged with embarrassment. Jasper felt his heart squeeze with compassion. "Don't worry about that," he said quickly. "I'll find something that will work for tonight, okay?" After searching through his closet, Jasper found an old t-shirt and a pair of shorts. Though still too big, they would serve Aiden well enough to sleep in. He left them in the bathroom along with clean towels and headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner. As he chopped vegetables for soup, Jasper's mind wandered to how drastically his life had shifted in just one day. That morning, he had been a successful lawyer, laser-focused on his career. Now, he found himself caring for a street child who might be the lost son of his long-lost friend. The weight of the day's events pressed on him, mingling with a sense of responsibility he hadn't felt in a long time. The sound of soft footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Jasper looked up to see Aiden standing in the kitchen doorway, looking even smaller in the oversized clothes, his wet hair clinging to his forehead. "Hey," Jasper greeted with a warm smile, trying to put the boy at ease. "Feeling better?" Aiden nodded shyly. "Thanks for the clothes," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're welcome. Come on, you can sit here," Jasper said, gesturing to one of the high stools around the kitchen island. "The soup will be ready soon." As Jasper finished preparing the meal, he kept a careful eye on Aiden. The boy seemed more relaxed after his bath, but the tension in his shoulders remained, a clear indication that he was still on edge, ready to run if things became too overwhelming. Jasper's heart ached to see such wariness in someone so young. "So, Aiden," Jasper began, placing a steaming bowl of soup in front of him. "How long have you been, well, on the streets?" Aiden stirred the soup with his spoon, avoiding Jasper's gaze. "I'm not sure. A long time," he finally said, his voice hollow. Jasper nodded, trying to keep his tone light and non-invasive. "And before that, do you remember where you lived?" The boy's grip tightened on the spoon, his entire body tensing. "I don't want to talk about it," he muttered, the pain in his voice palpable. Jasper immediately regretted the question. "All right," he said softly, backing off. "You don't have to talk about anything you're not ready to. But Aiden, I need you to know that I'm here to help. Your father, Dominic, has been looking for you." Aiden's head snapped up, his green eyes filled with a potent mix of hope and fear. "How do you know? How do you know my father?" he asked, his voice trembling. Jasper took a deep breath, knowing that honesty was the only path forward. "Dominic and I were best friends in law school. We lost touch a few years ago, but he called me today, desperate for help in finding you." Tears welled up in Aiden's eyes, spilling over his cheeks as he spoke. But he left me. He didn't want me." Jasper's heart shattered at the sight of the boy's anguish, his instinct to comfort battling with the knowledge that too much too soon could push Aiden away. "No," Aiden, Jasper said, his voice firm yet gentle. "I'm sure there's more to this story than you know. Dominic loves you. He never gave up on finding you." Aiden shook his head, his sobs intensifying. "You don't understand," he cried, his voice choked with emotion. He sent me away. He said I was a mistake." Jasper felt a deep sorrow settle in his chest, knowing there was a complicated history behind Aiden's words, a story that neither of them fully understood yet. He wanted to hold Aiden, to erase the pain with a simple embrace, but he knew that would only overwhelm the boy. Instead, he stayed close, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "Aiden, I don't know all the details, but I do know that you are not a mistake. You are important, and Dominic has been searching for you all this time. We'll figure this out together, okay?" Aiden looked up at Jasper, his tear-streaked face full of uncertainty and a longing for something better. "Why do you care?" he whispered, the question a plea for reassurance. Jasper smiled sadly, reaching out to gently touch Aiden's shoulder. "Because I was lost once too," he admitted, his voice tinged with his past regrets. "And someone helped me find my way. Now, I want to do the same for you." The boy didn't say anything, but the way he leaned slightly into Jasper's touch spoke volumes. It was a small gesture, but in that moment Jasper knew it was a step toward healing for both of them. As they finished their meal in silence, the weight of the day's revelations hung between them, unspoken but deeply felt. Jasper knew that their journey was only just beginning, and it wouldn't be an easy one. But as he looked at Aiden, sitting across from him, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and hope. He was determined to help Aiden find the love and safety he deserved, and maybe, just maybe, find redemption for himself along the way. That night, as Aiden settled into the guest room, Jasper couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a reunion of father and son. It was a second chance for all of them. And as the New York skyline glowed softly outside his window, he knew he would do everything in his power to make things right. As evening fell over the mansion, Daniela continued to tread carefully, aware of the growing tension but unsure of its full scope. Every interaction with Lorena felt like navigating a minefield, with the air between them charged and heavy. Daniela felt like an unwelcome guest in a house that held too many secrets, but she was determined to make the most of the time promised by Arturo. She knew she had to stay patient, play her part, and avoid drawing any more attention to herself. Lorena, on the other hand, was a storm beneath a calm surface. The previous night's confrontation had rattled her more than she would admit. She knew Arturo was suspicious, and the arrival of the detective only intensified her anxiety. She needed to act fast, to find a way to rid herself of Daniela before everything she had carefully built began to unravel. As the afternoon waned, the detective, Ricardo Belmonte, arrived at the mansion. His presence was a quiet disruption, but one that Lorena couldn't ignore. Arturo greeted him in his office, keeping their meeting far from Lorena's prying eyes. Detective Ricardo Belmonte Arturo began, his voice steady but tinged with underlying tension. "I need you to investigate my wife, Lorena. Something is going on that I can't ignore any longer. I need the truth." Ricardo nodded, his demeanor professional and composed. "Understood, sir. Can you provide any specific details or incidents that I should focus on?" Arturo hesitated, the weight of his suspicions heavy on his conscience. But he knew he had to be transparent if he wanted answers. Lorena was accused of discarding some critical documents of mine. Daniela, our guest, has an acquaintance who claims she saw a woman resembling Lorena disposing of something in a garbage container on a secluded street. I need you to verify this, check the security cameras in that area, and see if there's any truth to it. Ricardo made careful notes, his expression unreadable but intent. "I will review the security footage and follow up on this lead," he assured, before departing the office with quiet determination. As Ricardo delved into his investigation, the tension within the mansion only escalated. Lorena continued to keep her distance from Daniela, her actions increasingly furtive as she sensed the noose tightening around her. Arturo, caught between his role as a husband and his need for the truth, struggled to maintain a semblance of normalcy. He feared what the investigation might reveal, but knew that he couldn't live in uncertainty any longer. That night, as Arturo prepared for bed, his mind was restless. The decision to hire Ricardo weighed heavily on him, but he knew that allowing this situation to fester would be far worse. He had to prioritize security and justice, even if it meant confronting painful truths about his wife. Tomorrow will begin a new chapter, he thought, closing his eyes with a mixture of dread and resolve, hoping that whatever was uncovered would bring peace back into his life. The following day, Ricardo returned to the mansion, his demeanor calm but carrying the weight of his findings. He requested to speak with Arturo in private, and they retreated once more to the sanctuary of Arturo's office. Sir Arturo, Ricardo began, his voice grave, "I reviewed the footage from the security cameras on the street you mentioned. We should talk in private." Arturo's heart pounded as he closed the door, anxiety tightening his chest. "What did you find?" he asked, his voice betraying his fear of the answer. Ricardo opened a folder, revealing a series of photos and screenshots. Mrs. Lorena appears on the security footage, disposing of a bag in a garbage container on the street at the time your source indicated. Her movements were suspicious, furtive, as if she didn't want to be seen. Arturo stared at the images, his heart sinking with each passing second. There, in stark black and white, was his wife, engaging in behavior that seemed to confirm his worst fears. "It can't be," he muttered, though the evidence was undeniable. "I'm afraid it is," Sir Ricardo confirmed. "The footage aligns with the account you received. I suggest you approach this situation with care." Arturo took a deep breath, the room spinning slightly as he tried to process what this meant. Lorena's reaction during their confrontation suddenly made more sense, but the reality of what he had to do next filled him with dread. "Thank you, Ricardo," Arturo said, his voice heavy with the weight of betrayal. "I'll handle this. Please keep this confidential." "Of course," Sir Ricardo assured, his tone respectful as he took his leave. Left alone in his office, Arturo stared at the evidence laid out before him. The betrayal cut deep, and the thought of confronting Lorena again filled him with a mix of sadness and determination. But he knew that this was a confrontation he could no longer avoid. That evening, after dinner, Arturo decided it was time to face Lorena. The anxiety coiled tightly in his chest, but he kept his voice firm as he called her to his office. "We need to talk," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Lorena entered the office, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took in the serious expression on Arturo's face. "What is this about, Arturo?" Arturo motioned for her to sit down, his mind racing as he tried to find the right words. He knew this conversation could change everything, but he had to know the truth. "I need to know what happened," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I've seen the footage, Lorena. I know you were the one who threw away those documents." The color drained from Lorena's face, her composure slipping for the briefest moment before she forced a cold smile. "And what exactly are you accusing me of, Arturo?" "I'm not accusing," Arturo said, his voice tinged with sadness. "I'm asking you to tell me the truth. Why would you do this? What are you hiding?" Lorena's eyes flickered with a mix of fear and defiance. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words seemed to catch in her throat. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with all the unsaid words and buried secrets. Arturo braced himself, knowing that whatever came next would define the future of their relationship and the peace of his once stable life. "Please, Lorena," he implored, "I just want to understand." The truth, now so close, hovered in the air between them, waiting to be revealed. "Aiden, just take deep breaths," Jasper said softly, giving the boy's hand a reassuring squeeze. "Remember, you're not alone. We're in this together." Aiden nodded, trying to steady his breathing as the elevator continued its ascent. The anticipation in the small space was palpable, each passing floor bringing them closer to a moment that could change everything. Jasper could feel Aiden's anxiety, the fear and uncertainty clinging to the boy like a shadow. Yet, he also sensed a flicker of hope, fragile but undeniable. Finally, the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing the familiar corridor leading to Jasper's office. Aiden hesitated for a moment, his grip tightening on Jasper's hand. Jasper knelt to be at eye level with him. "Remember, you don't have to do anything you're not ready for," Jasper reminded him gently. "We can take this one step at a time. If you feel overwhelmed, just let me know, and we can step out." Aiden took a deep breath, nodding. "Okay," he whispered, his voice trembling but resolute. Together, they walked down the hallway, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. As they approached the door to Jasper's office, Jasper could feel his own heart pounding. He knew that this moment would be pivotal not just for Aiden and Dominic, but for himself as well. Jasper opened the door to his office, and there, standing by the window, was Dominic Reeves. The man looked older than Jasper remembered, the lines on his face etched deeper by years of worry and heartache. His eyes, however, lit up with a mix of shock and overwhelming emotion as he caught sight of Aiden standing beside Jasper. "Aiden," Dominic whispered, his voice breaking as he took a tentative step forward. "Aiden, is it you?" Aiden stood frozen for a moment, his eyes wide as he took in the sight of his father. The man who had been little more than a painful memory for so long was now standing right in front of him, looking just as uncertain and vulnerable as he felt. Jasper gently nudged Aiden forward, giving him the encouragement he needed. Aiden took a small, shaky step toward Dominic, then another. "Dad," he finally said, his voice a mix of disbelief and longing. In an instant, Dominic closed the distance between them, dropping to his knees and pulling Aiden into his arms. "Oh, Aiden," he sobbed, holding his son tightly as if afraid to let go. "I'm so sorry, my boy. I'm so sorry for everything." Aiden buried his face in his father's shoulder, the tears he had held back for so long now flowing freely. I thought you didn't want me," he cried, his small body shaking with the force of his emotions. Dominic pulled back just enough to look into his son's eyes, his tears streaming down his face. "No, Aiden. I never stopped looking for you, never stopped loving you. You were never a mistake, and I would never abandon you. Please, believe that." Jasper stood back, watching the reunion with a lump in his throat. The raw, unfiltered emotions in the room were almost overwhelming. He felt an immense sense of relief and fulfillment seeing Aiden and Dominic finally come together, the misunderstandings and pain beginning to dissolve in the embrace of a father and son who had been apart for far too long. As the tears subsided, Dominic stroked Aiden's hair, his voice gentle but firm. "We're going to figure everything out, I promise. We'll take it one day at a time, and we'll do it together." Aiden nodded, his face still pressed against his father's chest. "Okay," he whispered, the word carrying a weight of newfound trust and hope. Jasper cleared his throat softly, stepping forward. "Dominic, I'm glad you're here. We have a lot to discuss, but for now I think you two need some time alone. I'll step out and give you some privacy." Dominic looked up, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, Jasper. Thank you for bringing my son back to me." Jasper nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "It's the least I could do. I'm just glad you two are together again." As Jasper quietly left the office, he couldn't help but feel that his role in this story was far from over. The road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, filled with challenges as Aiden and Dominic worked to rebuild their relationship and navigate the complex emotions tied to their past. But at that moment, as he walked down the corridor bathed in the golden morning light, Jasper felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. He knew that he had been given a rare opportunity to make a difference in the lives of these two people, and he was determined to see it through, no matter what. The future was still uncertain, but it was also filled with possibilities for healing, forgiveness, and a brighter tomorrow. As Jasper exited the building and stepped out into the bustling streets of New York, he took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. The city was alive with its usual energy, but for Jasper, everything felt different. He had found something more important than any legal case or career milestone. He had found a connection, a reason to fight for something that truly mattered. And as he looked up at the sky, he couldn't help but smile. The journey was just beginning, but for the first time in a long time, Jasper felt ready for whatever life had in store for him. He would face it with courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief that no matter how dark the past was, there was always a way to find the light. Dominic shook his head, still holding on to Aiden, though his gaze shifted to Jasper with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. "Jasper, you have nothing to apologize for. Life took us in different directions, but you're here now, and that's what matters. You brought my son back to me, and I can never repay you for that." Aiden, still nestled close to his father, looked up at Jasper with a newfound sense of understanding. "You helped find me." Jasper smiled softly, feeling the weight of the moment. "I just wanted to help, Aiden. You deserve to know how much you're loved." Dominic's eyes, still wet with tears, reflected a profound sense of relief and the beginnings of hope. "Jasper, you're not just a friend, you're family. You've given me back what I thought I'd lost forever." Jasper nodded, feeling a deep connection rekindling between him and Dominic. The years of silence and distance seemed to fade, replaced by the shared experience of bringing Aiden home. "We'll figure this out together, Dom. You and Aiden aren't alone in this." Aiden, who had been listening quietly, suddenly wrapped his arms around both men, pulling them into a three-way embrace. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for bringing us together." Jasper felt a swell of emotion rise in his chest, his heart full as he returned Aiden's embrace. He had always been focused on his career, on the tangible successes of his life as a lawyer. But this moment, this reunion, was something beyond any achievement he had ever known. It was a reminder of the importance of human connection, love, and family, things he had distanced himself from over the years. Dominic gently stroked Aiden's back, his voice soft but resolute. "We're going to be okay, Aiden. I promise you. We'll take it one day at a time, but we'll do it together." Aiden nodded, finally feeling a sense of security and love that he had longed for during the years of separation. "I'm scared, but I'm also happy. I want to be with you, Dad." Jasper felt his tears threaten to spill over, the significance of the moment pressing down on him. He had spent years navigating the complexities of the law, but nothing had prepared him for the profound simplicity of this, of a father and son finding each other again, of the quiet power of a promise kept. The three of them stayed like that for a few moments longer, the room filled with a sense of peace that had been absent for far too long. When they finally pulled apart, there was a shared understanding between them, a bond that had been reforged, stronger than before. "Let's go home," Dominic finally said, his voice steady. "We have a lot to talk about, but we'll do it together as a family." Aiden smiled, the first genuine smile Jasper had seen on his face. "Yes, together." As they prepared to leave the office, Jasper knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with the complexities of healing and rebuilding, but it was a journey worth taking. He walked with them to the door, feeling a sense of fulfillment and purpose that he hadn't felt in years. Before they left, Dominic turned to Jasper one last time. "Jasper, you'll always have a place in our lives. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for everything." Jasper smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "You don't need to thank me, Dom. I'm just glad to see you both together. That's all that matters." As Dominic and Aiden walked out into the bustling streets of New York, Jasper watched them go, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. He had spent his life chasing success, but in the end, it was moments like this that truly mattered. As he closed the door to his office, Jasper knew that he had found something more valuable than any case or client. He had found the meaning of true friendship and the profound impact of helping others find their way back to each other. The city continued to hum with its usual energy, but for Jasper, the world had shifted in a subtle, powerful way. He felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that sometimes the most important battles are fought not in the courtroom, but in the quiet spaces of the heart. Dominic shook his head, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "No, Jasper, I understand. We both made mistakes, but you're here now, and you brought my son back. That's all that matters." Aiden, still nestled in his father's embrace, looked up with uncertainty clouding his eyes. "Dad, what happened that night? Why did Mom say you didn't want us anymore?" Dominic's face tightened with pain as he closed his eyes, the memories causing him deep anguish. He took a moment to steady himself before speaking, his voice heavy with regret. "Aiden, your mother. She was sick. She had a condition called bipolar disorder. Sometimes when she was unwell, she would see and believe things that weren't true. She wasn't herself during those times." Aiden's tears began to flow again, his voice trembling. "But she seemed so sure, Dad. She said you didn't want us, that we had to leave." Dominic pulled Aiden closer, his heart breaking for his son. "I know, son. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I never wanted you to experience any of this. That night, I just went out to get her medicine. I thought you both would be safe for just half an hour. I never imagined." Jasper stood by, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on him. He could see the depth of Dominic's guilt, the years of pain etched into his friend's face. He stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Dom, you were trying to help her. You did what you thought was right in an impossible situation. It wasn't your fault." Dominic looked at Jasper, a glimmer of gratitude in his eyes, before turning back to Aiden. "Son, I know this has been so hard on you. I know you're scared and confused, and I can't change the past, but if you'll let me, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost." Aiden glanced at his father, then at Jasper, his eyes searching for reassurance. Jasper gave him a supportive nod, his heart swelling with pride at the strength he saw in the young boy. After a long pause, Aiden took a deep breath, his voice small but filled with determination. I want to try. I want to be with you, Dad." Dominic exhaled, a sigh of relief escaping him as he pulled Aiden into another embrace, tears of gratitude filling his eyes. "Thank you, Aiden. Thank you for giving me this chance. I promise you won't regret it." Jasper watched them, his own emotions a blend of happiness and sorrow. He knew that the road ahead for Dominic and Aiden would be challenging, full of hurdles and healing that wouldn't come easy. But seeing the love in Dominic's eyes and the fragile hope in Aiden's, Jasper believed they could overcome the past together. Just then, Aiden's voice broke through Jasper's thoughts. "Jasper, you're still going to stick around, aren't you?" The simple question made Jasper's heart swell. He looked at Dominic, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Of course I will," Aiden. Jasper replied with a warm smile. "If you want me to, I'll be here for both of you, always." Aiden's face lit up with a shy smile, his fears momentarily eased by the promise of support. "Thanks, Jasper. I don't think I could do this without you." Jasper felt a deep sense of fulfillment, the kind that no courtroom victory had ever brought him. "You won't have to, Aiden. We'll take this one step at a time, together." Dominic nodded in agreement, his voice steadying. "We're a team now, the three of us. We'll face whatever comes next together." As they stood there, united by the shared promise of a new beginning, Jasper felt an overwhelming sense of hope. The challenges ahead were real, but so was the strength of their bond. In that moment, he knew that while the past could never be erased, the future was full of possibilities for healing, love, and redemption. And as they left the office together, stepping out into the bustling streets of New York, Jasper knew that they were not just leaving behind years of pain, they were stepping into a future where they could rebuild, stronger and closer than ever before. At that moment, as Jasper looked at the boy who had unexpectedly entered his life just 2 days before, and at the friend he had reconnected with after years of silence, he felt a profound shift within himself. He was no longer just a lawyer consumed by his career and ambitions. He was now a part of something far greater, something that transcended professional success, a part of a family that needed him, and that he needed just as much. The morning sun poured through the office windows, casting a warm, golden light over the three of them, almost as if it was blessing this new beginning. In that quiet, luminous space, Jasper made a silent vow. He would be there for Dominic and Aiden, supporting them as they faced the challenges ahead. He would help them heal, rebuild, and find their way back to each other. And maybe, just maybe, through this journey, Jasper would find a kind of redemption he hadn't realized he was searching for. The future was still uncertain, full of unknowns and difficulties. But for the first time in a long time, Jasper didn't feel the anxiety that used to accompany such uncertainty. Instead, he felt a sense of calm and purpose. The possibilities that lay ahead were vast and open, filled with potential for growth, love, and new beginnings. As the three of them stood together, bathed in the morning light, Jasper knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. And for now, that was more than enough. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey with Jasper, Dominic, and Aiden. As we've seen, life can take unexpected turns, bringing challenges that test our strength, love, and resilience. But through it all, there's always the possibility of redemption, healing, and new beginnings. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What have you learned from this story? Is there something that touched your heart or made you think differently? Please share one thing you've learned and will bring to practice in your own life in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more inspiring stories. Thank you for watching.